First few days I can remember in Denmark, when I was on South Road, the South Road gang, and I joined my first club, the He-Man Womanators Club. I think I was either 4 or 5. No girls were allowed, but Melanie, my sister, was a sergeant at arms and stood down at the bottom of the stairs where the chicken coop was. Dues were a penny. And those are good memories, the South Road gang. I'm going to read
I believe you caught her hair on fire. Huh? I believe you caught her hair on fire.
Well, that was part of the South Road gang thing, yeah.
When did you get the matches?
We took them from the houses that we had.
Is there any problems with that?
No, not till Ronnie Watson got I don't know, he just had a problem one night. He just decided that he better tell his mother what was going on. I'm going to read a few things of what took place back in the, 10 or 20 years ago when I was 10. No, this actually took place in the 50s and 60s. There were a lot of people, but there were a lot of organizations, but the biggest organization was right here in this hall, the Oddfellows Hall. They did a lot for the town. They sponsored the Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts and all that, and basketball or whatever went on. They were like the Lions Club, and they really did a lot for the town. And Ray Hale and Clyde Salmon were 2 of the Scoutmasters, and they took us on a lot of camporees and jamborees. And Chris Ray, as you know, he, spent I don't know how many hours just taking films. And I think Bob Sr. always took a lot of films too. So those two, there's probably a lot of film out there about Denmark, and those two did it. But one thing about Ray, when we went up, there was a place up at the falls up in West Denmark. I don't know if you folks are familiar with it, but we did a camp out up there, and they had these lean-tos, and you had to earn badges like you do with the Boy Scouts. And one of them was you had to build a fire with rocks, right? Well, Ray thought it would be more interesting if you just take the rocks, and he said, I'll put some water on the wood. Well, we didn't think that was so good, and it took us a long time before we got the fire, but we finally earned a badge, and we came down here to the Oddfellows, went upstairs, and we earned that badge. But we got even probably a few camporees later when we had a camporee down here on Granger Pond. There were probably, 7 troops. And Ray was still a scoutmaster, and there was a bunch of us got together, a lot of the scouts, and we decided that we'd take a can of beans, unopened, and put it in the campfire. So we had to get all the attention of the scout leaders and make sure that they weren't paying attention to what we were doing. And we did, and then they kind of went back around the fire. That baby blew up, and I'll tell you what, they were sun wild. If they could have found out who did it, there was quite a few of us involved, but we had the time. And then on one other occasion, Clyde Salmon in February took us down to the little pond, which we call Little Pond, which is Little Moose Pond. And we camped out in February. And, it was, I don't know if you'd call it fun. I think going to a hotel where it's heated would be a hell of a lot better. But we had a good time, but we did a lot of things like that. But, those guys were incredible, how much time they gave for the community and things like that. And it's unbelievable to have people like that in town. But, that's the way it was when I grew up, So, you guys anything to add?
Have you grown up yet?
No, I haven't. Probably never will.
I think you're doing good for yourself, but Clyde Salmon, Clyde did a lot of things in this town. He used to have a rowboat down by the boathouse, across the street from his house, that any boys or anybody wanted to use, could use any time. Clyde ran the print shop for, Wood said about 1,000 years before I bought it. And, he was just instrumental to town, him and Shirley. They did so much for the town and the boys and everybody around. If you had a bill, like what you say, Clyde never sent bills. And then you come back in to get the second audit, he might give you a bill for the first audit. But he never did bill anybody, so he was great.
Yeah, because I was a kid less years ago. These guys are a lot older than I am. So
He's a lot older.
I'm talking about probably in the 70s and 80s when I'm talking about. So, but back when I Phil's tourists, and I worked for Phil for years. I think everybody in town worked for Phil. I mean, when I was a kid, we'd show up at Phil's house and there'd be 30 people in the kitchen, and we'd all have coffee and donuts and stuff, and Phil would send everybody out this way and that way, and we'd all get in trouble. So, met this old gentleman named Cliff Hall. So Cliff, you know, when you're a young fella, these guys like to, you know, do stuff with you. So we was trying to round up some pigs one day, and Cliff said, "Oh, grab me by the tail." Well, guess what? Shit all over me. He said, "I meant the foot." He said, "I meant the foot." We couldn't believe these guys. So the one thing that I remember about, evidently my grandfather, he died when I was young, but I guess he got the dry sense of humor like Butch. So if you can remember back when they come out with carnation mixed milk in a can, so they had a contest where you could enter in for a jingle for this or a slogan or whatever. So evidently my grandfather won it, but it wasn't able to be put on the can. So I'm going to try to put it in the terms so it wouldn't be very foul. So if you think back to when they used to get milk, this is what carnation mixed milk in a can was. No tits to pull, no shits to swing, just punch 2 holes in the goddamn thing. I don't know what the problem was there. I mean, it should have gone in the can.
It definitely worked. Whoops, continue.
Well, I just want to mention, there were 3 brothers that I know of, Kermit, Clyde, and Frank. Now, Clyde and Kermit would go to church on Sunday. Frank would go to the liquor store and get a bottle of vodka probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and Saturday. Sunday he couldn't go because of the blue laws, but he was a pretty regular customer over there in Bridgeton, I tell you that. He built the Cardinal print shop, and they said it's very well insulated, glass line, vodka bottles.
I don't know, if anybody remember the Grit newspaper? I think everyone, you remember it?
Yeah.
I did. All 3 of us, we used to live with the Grit newspaper in Denver. And I remember this one gentleman, and Butch will probably tell you a story about this. Merle Ward had a cabin, a 12 by 12 cabin, towards, just before you get to West End Mac Road, which is called Rockin' Over now. So you'd go in there, and you'd have this beer setting on the stove, boiling. And it'd be like 120 degrees in there, and he goes, "Come in, young fella, and sit down. Cool off." How the hell are you going to cool off when it's like 120 degrees in here, you know? So you give him the Grit newspaper, and he'd tell you some story and stuff, and out the door you go, and you know, you'd see him down to the store the next day getting his 5-bag of Rheingold headed back to his house. And so Butchie's got a story about it.
Did you ever see the woman?
Yeah.
I never seen the woman, no.
Yeah, it was definitely a woman, we think. We don't know for sure, but the story went with, she was so big, when she went in through the door, she could make it through the door, but when she got inside, I guess she ate so much, she couldn't get out. So every kid in town was trying to go up and sneak in and look through the windows, but he put curtains up. So we figured he started the story. So we don't know actually how she got out unless she went on a hell of a Jenny Craig diet. But we to this day, we don't know what happened with her.
Well, maybe him and Ray Wingman, when they went down on the bowling boat there, maybe they dumped her off.
Probably did. Does everybody know how Planned Parenthood gets started? Well, it got started right here in Denmark. Weeman's store, which was down at the foot of the hill, if everybody's familiar with it, it was actually originally owned, I guess, by Frank Mitchell. And Hector Blake and Roland Blake, I guess you guys probably can remember them. They came down to run it for Frank, and then eventually it got turned over to Ray Weeman, Ray and Daisy. And then Everett Parsons, which I guess was Daisy's son, ran it for him, and they had quite a grain business. Rodney Watson and Don Hamilton worked there, and a lot of cribbage was played there. But sometime in the 50s, we figure the middle 50s, Charlie Weeman, which was Ray's son, and Larry Sinclair went in and poked holes in all the contraceptives in the store. The next year, there was a big population flooding in Denmark. And guess what? That's how Plain Banner good started.
It would be great, and then Frank Schmidt would be one of the Planned Parenthood. He never planned anything, it just happened to him. Well, I mean, Frank, let's see, he went to school in Vermont, left there when he graduated and went to New York City. He worked at Kennedy, and he also worked as an EMT. He told all kinds of stories about what he did down there and stuff, and then he met his wife, of Irene Schmidt. They left New York City and moved to northeast Cary, Maine, a population of 14. He worked there as a logger for 4 or 5 years. I mean, he got left in the woods up there, and he had all kinds of stories. But then he moved to Denmark in the late 30s, I believe, if I'm correct, and he worked at Camp Walden. And that was his livelihood for the next 50 plus years. He divorced Kitty, married a lovely young lady. I mean, like he was 52, she was 18. But, I mean, you know, he liked the ladies. And he said, I always liked younger women. So he did his thing. But he was a great guy. He was a great speaker. He ran town meetings in this town for years. It's amazing how many things he actually did for this town. He ran the civil defense, he was part of the fire department. But I asked Frank one day, as I went to work at Camp Walden to take over his position down here, I said, Frank, what is it down here that's made you live so long and be so spry? Is it the water or the women? He said, I'll tell you anything you need to know about the maintenance. He said, yeah, young fella, you find out on your own.
His brother Peter, I don't know if a lot of you remember him, he was huge in the Masons. I mean, he made it as far as, I guess, ran Mason in the state of Maine, and he traveled all over the world. But I'll tell you what, when that guy got up to speak, I mean, you just had to listen to him because he was so inspirational. I mean, I've never heard anybody speak. I mean, Frank was a great speaker and had a lot of good stories, but I'll tell you, Peter was unbelievable. Just fun to listen to him. I mean, he just, you know, he and his wife were all, they just traveled all over the country and stuff like that, but he was...
Was he a good car driver?
Oh, no, he was good. He was great. I mean, he could have raced in the Indy 500, that's no problem. I mean, he went by the house at a family reunion a few years ago and just cleaned the mirrors around the cars. He got a problem, he didn't even realize it.
I do have to mention one thing though. There's a guy, and I think he's here tonight, that had a lot to do with this building ending up with the Denmark Art Center. And his name is Henry Banks. I can remember the town meeting that he just stood up and he purchased it. I can't remember what the amount of money was, but this guy is incredible because not only did he purchase this, when the Denmark Library came into existence, he took a year off from work. And he was instrumental in that whole building being built up there. He took the whole year off from work just to do it. And George Stolman was another one. He laid all the bricks up there. George laid a lot more than bricks, but I mean... oh, is his wife here?
Which wife? Which wife?
No, but I mean, it's, you know, it's pretty nice to have people like that that are willing to give so much to the town of Denmark. Another one is Terry Rhodes, who was instrumental in the purchase of the property that was down there, which was part of S.C. Warren that he purchased from John Keel. Without somebody like that in town, it would never happen. Another guy is Gary McFarland with the Denmark ball field. I mean, he just took it over and redid all the sod and just made it happen up there. I think she wants me to leave.
Yeah, I think she said you just better shut up.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
Anybody remember Fred Colby and Angie?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Fred was a street star. He would come down to Ken Logg's house on a Sunday morning to pick up the newspaper.
59 in power.
He did 59
Gold.
gold, and fast. But when he'd go by, we'd all line up with bicycles and we'd pass him before he got there. I mean, it was just amazing. He drove probably 12 miles an hour, and he'd always wave to us, "Hi boys, how's the day going?" Yeah. And then now we have John Watson. He rides the same speed, so we're going to pass him too.
Grade 4 pickup.
Ready for a pickup at 12 miles an hour.
I'm gonna talk one thing, this won't be very funny, but when I was a kid, I worked at Bucknell Farm, and I don't know if anybody remember Bucknell Farm. But when I was up there, the first few years I worked there, Arthur and Mary still ran the farm. So at noontime, she made a lunch for the whole crew. You went and you sat down and had a family cooked dinner. Now, you never get that these days, I'm telling you. It was amazing to work at that place. They took so very good care of the people they hired and the people that came in. But the one thing
But they did not like rocks in their pea pails. So
yeah,
I thought,
you didn't, yeah, well, you didn't like working there, Jimmy. You tried to,
I tried to cheat
a half a pack of beans, Jimmy would put beef in the rocks and it doesn't work. You know, what do you know?
I said, dump them out and said, you know, you paid for this one.
That's why I worked there. And then when I got to be hired for hourly wage, we called ourselves, we was whores from 7 to 4.
Fred's wife, Angie, had a sister, Julia, which lived, what, half a mile from us? Yeah. We all got to mow her lawn. And she had one of those lawnmowers that did not have an engine. We got paid 25 cents an hour. You were in the engine. I think the first time I mowed it, I was 8. When I got done mowing the lawn, I was 9.
It was one that you could push downhill. You had to pull it up the driveway and start over again. There's no way to push it uphill.
When I started mowing there, they had a motor on it because I was a lot younger than these guys.
Speaking of that, yeah, I mean, you're almost the same age as them. You must be almost brothers with them. We're the kind of babies in the family.
Fred?
Yeah.
He was my second cousin.
What else you got there? She did a bunch of stuff.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of people. Well, we got Ray Hale's brother, Norm. I worked for him at Camp Wyanagonic for many, many, many years. And he had 2 guys that worked with him in the spring crew and fall crew. Well, Oscar Freeman worked with him all summer. He was quite a character. He rolled his own cigarettes, zigzag papers. I don't know what the tobacco was, but it was pretty strong. But Jess Kennison was the other one. In springtime, they'd come together, they'd get in the back of the pickup. I'd be riding up front with Norm, and they'd get in the back of the pickup, and Jess would just twist his hat around, and he'd give Oscar a kiss on the cheek, and Oscar would say,
"You pewterhead, get out of here!"
every morning.
Every morning, there's one clockwork. Yeah. They loved each other, though.
Norm was the town clerk for years in town. His brother Ray was the tax collector right at the house. They did it, everything right at the house.
We call Ray Jingles, too. We call Ray Jingles. He had
Jingles,
big
oh, yeah.
keys and he could hear him from a mile away.
Yeah, he was the janitor at school. He did everything. I mean, he and, I think, Irvin Trumbull. I don't know. Does anybody remember Irvin Trumbull besides me?
No, I think we do, but you have that's memory better.
He was the first constable that I can remember in town. We called him Sabertooth. He only had one tooth. He had a panel truck for his police cruiser. I can remember that just as plain as day.
Good memory, don't you?
And then I think Arthur Bucknell, and then Paul Kisner came along.
Right? Exactly. Yes, it's just how that town is. And then after Paul got done, we got no constable, so we blew it. If Paul was here, I would tell him that. He knows that.
The only trouble is with Paul, when he was a constable, we raised him heck in the town. He'd tell everybody to go home. I had to go home because he lived right across the street from me, so I couldn't stay there. So I was in trouble for that, so.
Also, another thing that took place at this building was the Denmark dances, and two people that were responsible for it was Arthur and Mildred Ramirez. They were so instrumental. Arthur was retired from the Army, and Arthur was kind of like the more or less the bouncer here. A little guy, I tell you what, you didn't want to give him any lip. And Mildred ran the concession stand, and there were two women that used, I can remember just plain day. They used to come to the dances. Long, tall Emma and short Sally. I don't know where they came from. They were, and Arthur McDonald, who used to work for Kent Law, would come up and he'd dance with the both of them. Same time, usually, but it was a lot of fun up here. I mean, just a lot of things that went on, but they...
I believe Herbert Payne and Wally Eaton, Archie Tripp, and Paul Kisman were far behind him.
But that was a lot of fun back in those days. You know, that was in the 90s.
1890s?
Pretty close. But we were lucky to have people that would actually take the time to volunteer to do that, you know, just so as kids we could come in and join. The other thing that used to take place up here, high school graduations. The Hunters Ball. The Hunters Ball was another thing where there were hunters from New York City that stayed up in the Ingalls home up here where Peter and Julie Brewer lived. And they'd come every year, and it'd probably be 8, 10, maybe 12 of them. And there'd be a wanted poster with one of their pictures on it. And the kid that found him, what did they give him, Mel?
I don't remember that.
You know, they used to put a bounty on it.
I don't
In the
remember.
winter of it, they used to give something. My sister, she doesn't remember much.
People.
You know your name?
She's older than you, and that's pretty old.
Now, anybody remember Lou Bauer? Lou was very instrumental in doing stuff in town, but the biggest thing he ever did was he always put the docks in down at the beach. So us kids would get out and help him. But Lou would always set up a transit to set the docks. And we say, Lou, why do you need a transit? Well, Jesus, the damn water runs down here, you get the docks level, he said. We just couldn't figure that out, but I mean, I guess it worked. I mean, the docks look good every year, so I mean,
And all three of us think that probably the beach should be named after Lou Bauer because he spent so much time down there. I think it'd be a great thing. Don't you?
Certainly, whatever you say, you're older. I gotta tell you a little story about Don Monson. Don Monson, they were instrumental in town, did many things. He ran the village store after Peter Schmidt. He bought it off Peter. Ran it for years, ran the oil company. But back in the store, after he bought it off Peter, Peter Schmidt had made the Stebbins Company, which did fold-up saws. They did heat-reflected ovens. They did folding chairs, and they did Campaxes, different sizes and whatever. So after Don, Don kept this Stebbins pad in the store. And one day this woman came in and she said, Patty, do you have any Campax? And he thought, she said Campax. He said, you want long or short handed? Don said that was pretty embarrassing. He didn't know what size she wanted. Anybody in the audience got something to add to this?
Another fellow that used to live in town, I know probably a lot of you haven't remember him, was Dick Hunt. He used to live up here where my brother's got his rental right now, right next to the print shop. His mother, I guess, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, I don't remember those. But anyhow, she had a where the firehouse sits, at a boarding house up there. I guess, and everybody said it was pretty nice. Dick was, I don't know, he's pretty unusual, but I think he had polio. He was, you know, he was in a wheelchair all his life. He drove a Henry J for years, which was made by Kaiser. And he used to take us, John Osgood or Merton Law and I, down to Curly Pond to go fishing, right? He'd drop us off and he said, I'll come back and get you in a couple hours. Because he was another one like Frank. I think they met over at the liquor store. They loved their vodka.
Did you meet him over there too?
Huh?
Did you meet him over there too?
Well,
Did you meet them?
Show's over. Light's over.
I want to thank
Have a
you.
good night. Wait, wait.
I liked it better with the lights on. I can't see anybody that way. But anyhow, with Dick, he'd take us down there, he'd drop us off at Pearly Point and say, I'll be back in a couple hours. He'd be back, we'd be hitchhiking back, and he'd drive right by us, and he'd go just like this, every time. Toot the horn and wave to us, and he'd just keep right on going. After about 3 weeks of that, we decided we'd find another ride.
We also had Charlie Knight of a Cloud, who were tax collectors in town for years. We used to go there to pay the taxes. Charlie was a printer at Capital Printing for Clyde for years. He was a member of the fire department. And then we also had Merle Moore, which was the fire chief for, gosh, how many years? 35, 40 years or
Yeah,
more.
right.
Yeah, and then Harold Rankin after Merle. Merle was also an avid snowmobiler. He worked in the snowmobile club endlessly. I mean, he was just fun to be around. I mean, I had him, Harry Dunn, Charlie Ford, and we'd go out and go grooming with 2x4 drags with 12 horsepower snowmobiles. I was like, 15, 16, and they would just keep me going. Great bunch of guys. So much good to have this town, had so many nice people.
Yeah, I was lucky to have Charlie Ford work for me for a couple of years when I was road commissioner. Charlie, it was like I had two different guys, Doc and Jekyll, Miss Hyde, Earl Hill working for me. His truck looked like a pig thing. Charlie's truck, you could eat off the seats, floors, the engine, or whatever. So Sean Watson was working for me at the time, picking rocks and doing stuff for the town. So I had Charlie dig a culvert up on the lake road. So me and Sean, we took off to go get the culvert to do something. And we come back, it was just beyond Holiday Shores. And there's Charlie got the backhoe down in the woods. And I mean, there was a hole deep enough that you could probably bury a tractor trailer in. And Charlie stuck with the backhoe. And I said, Charlie, what the hell are you doing? Well, I want that damn water to run off the road. I said, Charlie, I said, the woods is higher than the ditch. I said, the water's not going to run through there. I said, I'm going to get the tractor back up there. So he's trying to get the back off, and he was so mad. You guys know Charlie, he got so mad, he started throwing up. And I thought Sean Watson was going to die laughing. I've never seen anybody get so worked up. And I said, oh yeah, Charlie will do that. I said, I'll tell you what, don't tell you, little bastards, I'm going to get that baby baby.
Yeah, he was pretty spick and span. He used to drive for Hamlin Lumber down there, and they take their vehicles down and get them worked on at Hester's. Lucian Hamilton, Dawn's brother that worked at the store here, worked as a mechanic down there. And he knew Charlie was really spick and span. So every time the truck would come in, he'd take grease and put it all over the steering wheel. And Charlie would get in that baby and drive out, and boy, I'll tell you what, the pipe would just twist around in his mouth. Popeye the Sailor Man.
Well, we talked about the camps, but we never did talk about how we took Jess and Norm and Oscar. We'd look to Winona to help them every year to remove their docks. And of course, Jess always had a ball of running the barge. He would do the lifting of the docks and like pull them away so you'd fall in the water. That was his big thing to do. He always had to fall in the water. Then we had Smolder and Joe. And every time we looked for Joe, he'd be up in his pickup. He had something behind his seat, we just don't know what it was. But by golly, he had something there that he really liked. He worked with Harry Keller, which used to live right across the street here at the Ingalls home, not Ingalls home, but the Keller home, yeah. Yeah. So, good people, a lot of stories there.
Now Herbie Payne, you guys, everybody knows Herbie Payne. So, I did hay for everybody in town, and Herbie used to hay for Ken Lord. Well, Ken Lord was famous for not letting his hay dry completely. It was always like 200 pounds heavier than everybody else's bale. But when you work with Herbert could throw the bales up in the pickup. So we'd load the pickups and we'd head to the barn. So we'd get in the pickup, and Herbert said, "You want a cold drink?" And I said, "Yeah." He'd reach behind the seat of his truck and bring out a 16-ounce Budweiser, almost boiling.
Run your lips on
And
the
he
game.
would drink 3 of them from the field to the barn. And I'm looking at him and go, "Boy, I'll tell you what, he likes his beer."
I'd take one right now.
What else we got, fellas? We got something to leave it there. What you got for Russboro, there you go. What you have to do for you? Yes.
Yeah, we've got a few people that live down on our road. Julia Pingree, the people that moved in, well, I think they were, don't take this wrong, but I think a-holes. I know I'm not supposed to say things like that. Should it be televised? Well, they were only in for 2 years, so I guess they were a-holes. Anyhow, Bob and Penny Morris bought the property, Julia Pingree's, in I think 67. Yeah. And they've been down there since then. And Bob is, I don't know, we call him the Kramer of Denmark. When I told him that, he says, "Who's Kramer?" Here's a guy from New York City and New Jersey, and he never heard of Seinfeld. And
He should have watched TV with Bob McDermott. Helen used to say the only time Bob laughed is when Seinfeld was on.
but the people that live next door, Russ and Ruth Burrows. Russ was an avid hunter. He was from Twin Falls, Twin Mountains up in New Hampshire. And he hunted, I think, from the time he was probably 8 years old. And then they moved to, he and Ruth married sometime in the 30s, and he moved up here, went to a lot of schools, oil burning schools and different things like that. But they moved to Denmark on South Road, right next to where Bob and Penny lived. I think that was another Colby place or Pingree place, one or the other. It had to be the Colby or Pingree. But they lived there for years, but he was an avid hunter. And I know I hunted with him. Both my brothers did, and
Shot my first deer with him.
yeah. And I could walk right by him, and he would just pick them right out. See, there he is, whatever he do, he'd always see him. But anyhow, he and his son would hunt down on, I think they call it the island, right below Little Pond. And I remember many times when my father and Russ and Alan would have to get down by canoe at night, and canoe down a little pond and go down the brook, pick the deer up and bring them back up. That happened a lot of nights. Russ actually did oil heating at the time. He was a repairman and he did plumbing, but he never was on call in November except after 7 at night. But he was
Something like Stacey Brothers said.
he was a pretty remarkable person because he just ended up, he was hired by the Army Corps of Engineers. He lived in all 48, lower 48 states, and he and his wife traveled everywhere. But I'll tell you what, every November, he was back in Denmark to go hunt.
Yes, another thing we should bring up would be the teachers that were here in Denmark. That anybody that lived here for years would know that first there was Cora Hall that ran kindergarten through grade 2, and then Olive Schmidt took over after Cora retired. We had Grace Hale. She ran in grades 3, 4, and 5. We had Edith
Really
Schmidt,
hard too, I'll tell you.
6, 7, 8. And nothing got by them. I mean, Grace Hale broke more rulers over people's hands and heads than any teacher you could ever imagine. You did learn one way or the other. But they were great. And we also had Elsie Erkson, was that cook at the Denmark school for years, cooked the best meals you could ever ask for. I can remember we had lunch one day, and Grace Hale had her cup of hot coffee and was headed up, and Edith Smith come down the stairs and bowled through and hit there's a swinging two-way door, and the coffee went all over the place. Boiling hot coffee, and then
Oh.
they had a few words, but it all worked out at the end. Oops, sorry. What else we got, boys? Any questions out in the audience? Anybody want to bring somebody up we don't have thought
You
of?
guys know each other?
No,
We're not related, no.
not at all.
Didn't you
There-
guys
there
play
was a-
softball with donkeys or something?
Oh, yes.
You guys can tell about the donkeys.
Oh, the donkeys.
Donkey baseball game.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
that one.
We did have that a couple of years, and then Butch, he kind of chickened out after his first episode. I think he was running the first base, weren't you? And you went over it.
The jackass was running the first game. I only made it halfway.
Yeah, he ended up in the hospital that night. We had Bob Willis and Bob Doyle. They would stand up, and they could just stand up, the donkeys run out from under them. They didn't have to work. They just crawl up long enough legs, the donkey would leave. Yeah, we had quite an episode with the donkeys. Yeah, I had them in my backyard for a couple nights. Yeah, it was pretty entertaining, that's for sure. But plenty of people there, a lot of fun. Only Butch got hurt. You know.
Yeah. Another building in town was the community house, which is at the top of the hill. There were a lot of events that took place, a lot of people, with the church and stuff, that's where everything happened with the church, I guess, with the Sunday school. We do the Christmas parties there, where Melanie and I would always do a big thing of lifesavers. They do the, Thanksgiving, we do sock hops, all that kind of stuff. But there were a lot of people involved in the church, which I think need to be mentioned, and that was Ken Lodge's daughters. You had Esther, Marion, Thelma, and Betty. Every one of them was Sunday school
You mean
teachers.
Percy didn't do this?
No, Percy never went to church. But I do have to mention this. These other two people that were really instrumental. Miss Parker, Eugenia Parker, and Kay Parks.
Yeah.
And Kay Parks' father also lived there. And those two were so instrumental with younger kids. They did a lot for the kids in town and stuff like that, both of them. They raised chinchillas. I don't know, just a lot of fun to be around them. She made sure that they were always put trout up in a pool, because she lived right there by next to Ranger Brook, where it came down through.
Yeah, she lives where Nathan Holbert and
Yep.
his mother live now.
But Kay had a father that always would go to church, and he had these sticks that I believe are called plays. And if anybody is sitting next to somebody that plays those things, or attempts to play them, that is the most annoying thing I've ever heard. He would do that on every song. And I don't know why, but our parents would make us go to church after Sunday school, and just some Sundays, I'd end up right next to him. And I've never heard anything so annoying.
You've been all week, they want to make sure you pay attention.
But he just enjoyed playing those things, and I guess he was good at it, I don't know. I didn't think he was, but...
Then we had Edith Smith's husband, which is our teacher,
Ben Smith.
Ben Smith. They played it all with graduations here. He played his musical song.
Played every Saturday night, too.
Every Saturday night, yes, I believe he did. He had a musical song. I mean, we all laughed at him, but he did well.
And now everybody remembers Percy Lloyd, right?
Yes.
Percy done so much for the town, and probably everybody individual in this town, from doing the Beano Supper and the Lions Club, and he took when I was 14, the first year that we used to go north and go hunting. We camped just below Northeast, just the Suncook Village, where Percy knew. We camped on the end of the lake. We camped there every year. He cooked for all of us. I mean, Percy was just one of those guys. He'd do anything for anybody. But I remember one time we was up there, and Gene Lloyd was there. We would get back from hunting. We sit down, mixed a drink, and Percy said, "I'll have a drink." So Gene thought he'd be a little smack, so he filled the glass right up full of whiskey and put a little ginger ale on it, right? So we give it to Percy. Percy figured, "Who the hell put the ginger ale in there?" He said.
this town, because Junior Snow drove for years for the Academy bus. We also had B. Stacey, our mother, B. Seeley, and Verna Moulton. And they drove the buses in town.
And Ray Hale.
Right, Hale drove the bus.
He used to come and pick me up when it was.
Who invited you to this time?
I did. Make sure you got the facts straight.
She can't remember her name, but she remembers this.
Do we have a bouncer here, we can move her to the back row?
I knew we were gonna have hecklers tonight, you know?
Anyway, they drove buses for years.
Why did, you wanna know why he
I
picked
don't
me
know
up
why.
early?
Why?
Ray would come down and pick me up if it was snowing because he needed traction in the back seat of the
Did he have this?
station wagon, and my father said that is not a compliment. But he always got to school when I was.
But it worked, right? But it worked?
It worked.
Yeah.
That was good traction.
Well, it worked, yeah. Did he have his keychains on?
I don't know. He said, call and say I'm coming to pick you up. I said, okay.
Yeah, well, that's before our time.
No, not that much. Not before him.
I remember, Melanie, I wasn't the twinkle in the
I
old man's
know,
eye.
I know. You're 10, or 7. He's 2.
As I remember, you wanted to kill him when he was born.
Yeah. I was very disappointed.
I remember when she dressed me up as a Dutch girl for
Oh, and you
Halloween.
won.
I didn't want to come out of the damn house.
And you won. And you won first place. Prettiest.
I was hiding in the closet all night.
No, you came out first place.
Oh, straight too.
I'm sure he'll use it.
I also want to thank our father Ralph and Beatrice, because without them, we wouldn't be here to tell you all this bullshit.
There's many a time that we didn't think we was ever going to make it this far.
True.
And then our grandfather Wynn, Butch used to take a lot of rides with him.
Yeah.
How about tell them a story about when you went to the Butler Farm?
Yeah, it probably wasn't too old, 8 or 9. Probably right after I got done mowing Julie's lawn. At that time, Butler Farm had everything. They had everything you wanted up there, all the vegetables and stuff like that. And so my grandfather took me up there, and we were just going to get stuff, but I guess he had a little too much to drink. And he backed into the truck. And Arthur said, "You've got your grandson with you. I think, Gwen, you better drive home real careful." And he did. He was good.
Yeah, I mean, both sides of his car were always dead in. He had a black box in the garage with a black label in it.
Oh, and that's
Until
where,
Graham took it
That's
away
where
from
he
him.
gets it from.
It wasn't refrigerated either.
No, it wasn't. They never refrigerated it.
I still have that in the garage, and I took it to Butchie one day, and I said, "You're the elder now, you gotta have it," and I put a 6-pack in it for him. Now, back when I was 15, 16 years old, I used to ride snowplow with Harry Dunn, Frank Bucknell, and most of the time it was a pretty good adventure. We used to plow driveways, not a lot of them, we used to plow from driveways. So we used to plow up the West End Mark one day, and I don't know if anybody remembers the game Wild Bill. What was Bill's last name? Was it Bill Pano or something like that?
All I ever knew him was Wild Bill.
Yeah, so he was on the Smith Road, so, you know, when we get done plowing, we clean up the driveway and stuff. So Frank backs up and he said, we'll plow on Bill's driveway. So we plow in through Bill's driveway, and all of a sudden, this stuff comes flying up through the window. Well, evidently, there was no power up there, so Bill had wires coming off his battery from his car into his house to run stuff. Well, it was pulling stuff out through the window, and Frank said, "We better get the hell out of here." So while Bill comes running up, jumps up on the running board, giving Frank hell, we're backing out the door, we get out to the he jumps off, Frank says, "I guess we better not do that again." And Frank was pretty quiet about stuff. So another time we was plowing Harry Dunn. Oh, Harry, he used to call me Little Wet all the time. I don't know why, he used to call me, "You little wet." So,
We can understand.
yeah, okay. So we was down on Walden-Rocky Road, and we used to get very, I don't know, probably as long as maybe out of towners here, but we don't get married. So there'd be a lot of out of towners in the wintertime that would not shovel their cars into the driveway. So back then, we used to get a lot of snow. So we was coming down the road, and the 4-wheel drive truck, we had dual wings on it. So I'm setting banks on this side, and Harry says, "You watch this." He picks his wing up, cleans the snow off the roof of the car as we go by. We come back and I said, you've never seen two people shovel so damn fast in your life.
All three of us plowed snow. And I plowed the year I got out of the service for Phil Richardson. Everybody worked for Phil Richardson at least one time or another. And I was plowing up through, I think, I don't know, what was it, 65 board? 65 board, I think it was.
Edgewood, yeah.
But remember, I'm not that old.
I was going up through Edgewood, and I was going pretty fast. And I met Larry Kennison and Jack Shan. Jack Shan said I blew all his spark plug wires off his truck. I was going so fast. I don't think I could have been going that fast, but I think I probably only knocked two off because he actually drove down and gave me hell down the fire. Larry Kennison, boy, he was mad. So I slowed down the next time. I think I kept it under 50. I figured the faster you drove, the more you get the snow out of the road, right?
Actually, speaking of plowing, Paul and I one night when he was plowing up on Keels Road. John Keel lived up there. We didn't plow the Picket Hill back then. As people moved up there since, we used to turn around at John Keel. Well, we got stuck there. So we went up and got the other truck at the town garage, a four-wheel drive, and we pulled the truck around sideways and drove it. So, Paul, so you drive that one back to the garage, and I'll drive the four-wheel drive. So we get back up to the garage, and Paul get in, and I get over, and he said, lift the wing up. I did, and the truck fell down. Well, the front wheel was gone. We drove it up the road with the front wheel under the rear axle. We was on the plow. Phil sent us home that night.
Jimmy, why don't you tell the story about Frank and Edmund over to Camp Walden?
Frank and Edmund, no, you tell that.
No, I think you probably have told him. Well, there was, I guess it was his counsel over there that Frank kind of liked.
He liked all the council.
And there was this tent that they kind of met at, probably, when they took the break. I guess the campers went in, took their break, and I guess Frank and the counselor went and took their break. And Edmund evidently knew which tent they were going into. So he took the bed and moved the edge of the bed right off the edge of the platform. So they went in and did their thing, and they were just kind of having a good time bouncing and jouncing and around. And all of a sudden, they both fell right out through the tent on the bed. And Frank took off after Edmund. Edmund stayed up in the tree all afternoon, I guess.
Arthur Rankin. Oh, we're going to tell the story. Arthur was a great driver. I mean, he could cover the whole road like this in a hurry and, at a high speed of movement. Well, back in the early 80s, Arthur had been what? He'd been representative, he'd been a selectman, and he was pretty high mucky buck. Well, I come down driving a school bus off the Berry Road, turning right on Hancock, and there's Arthur's car with just the rear doors and the trunk hanging out of his house. And I look and I said, oh, God. So Frank Smith came along with the crew from Walden, and they went over and started, I couldn't leave the bus because I had children on, so they started pulling the clapboards off the house. Arthur rang and looked up at Frank and said, what the hell are you doing? Stayed in my house out. But he made the first drive-through in Denmark.
Arthur was, pretty rough and tough, but he was a representative of town in Denmark. Another guy that he was a state senator, was Dick Dunn, that lived up on High Ridge Road, not too far from where Bobby lives. And he and his wife, Dick always dressed right to the hilt. They were very well spoken, very soft spoken, but Arthur and him would just kind of clash. But at town meeting, it was kind of funny to just kind of watch them all. You got Ken, you got Arthur, Leonardo Ontario that always wanted his road plowed down on Swan Road, right?
Lost Valley.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, he would get so mad, his neck would turn purple all the way up to it. It was fun to watch him. They would go at it every town meeting, which was held right up there.
And Cliff Ball,
Oh, yeah.
just love to go after Tim Lott.
Yeah.
I don't care if he said it was black, you would say it was white, and they would just do this for the whole town meeting. What else we got, folks? You got anything out there in the audience and ask questions about, or something we haven't covered? There's a lot we haven't covered, but we
Well, we could talk about Granny Richardson.
oh my God.
Granny, the town hall up here where it was, now this is where we used to play basketball, we used to have the town meeting and stuff. And when we was kids, we had basketball games there. Which was the coach of me, that tells you how old he is, like coach me basketball.
And me as well.
Yeah, so we'd have like Hiram or Brownfield or somebody come over, and they didn't know whether to wear skidoo suits or come in your skivvies because no potbelly stove, you did 110 degrees and 20 below zero in there. But Mary Richardson, because there was no, like here when this place was first here, there was no running water or anything like that. So we'd all go over to Granny's and get water and stuff, and she just loved to see all the kids come in. I mean, she was like that second home. I mean, I lived there probably half a year. Me and Kenny would spend all the time there, but she was very instrumental in taking care of this kid when we played ball and stuff there at the town hall. And the town hall used to be a hanging out place for a lot of us kids when we was younger. So.
That used to be where the selectman's office was, up over the town, well, where the town, you call it the gym, but it was
Yeah.
up over there. That's where they used to meet, and kind of neat. Then our parents got together, and they actually put in two bathrooms, which were
That's nice.
sort of like outdoor porta potties.
Just put a pretty plywood, a couple holes in it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Go ahead, what you look talk.
Well, I probably shouldn't bring this up, but there's a lot of mandates going on in this country, right now, and I don't want to be political or anything like that. You got the mask mandate, you got the you gotta have the shot mandate. The government wants to look in to see that if anything that's gonna be over $600, if you're spending it, they wanna keep track of that, so they're gonna do that, right? Well, I just found out about something else, we've gotta turn our clocks back in November, right? But there's something else that's coming down the road, which they want you to mandate. They really want you to change your clocks, and I found out why. You think there was a chip shortage, but there really isn't. Because the government got control of this, and they're gonna have chips, they're gonna have cameras actually put in all the clocks. They've got the clock manufacturers, of course. And what they're doing is they're putting cameras in the clocks, so when you buy the clocks, you're gonna put them in your house. And I think what they're trying to keep track of is how much toilet paper you're actually using. There's a shortage out there. So any of you people that have diarrhea and you're using a lot of toilet paper, the Justice Department will be after you. You're in a world of you know what.
There's all kinds of things to say, but where do you start? How about anybody in the audience? Anybody got questions or comments we can help with? Or?
What song are you gonna sing?
Wise man.
Far away.
There's always been a unique road down South Road. When we was growing up, we had a gentleman across the road, Ned Gleason. He had probably, 300 cats? Yeah, so, Ned didn't eat anything but cat food. He ate cat food with his cats. And Ned would come over, he was a nice guy. He'd come over to the house and sit down, and have something.
Peter Flyers.
Yeah, it was P.S. Flyers. Yeah, P.S. Flyers.
The sneakers got out to the columns to stick
Yeah,
out.
never wore boots. Never wore boots. He just had his P.S. Flyers on constantly. But he always come over to the house and stuff. Never had running water or anything like that. But the guy always took care of his cats. No matter what. His cats was his life. But he had
When he called the store for an order, they delivered it to him. It was 2 cases of kilo cat food and a gallon of milk.
And they'd hold their nose on the way in and out.
and a couple packs of Red Man, though. He liked his Red Man.
Yes, What else? All right, we'll wait for it.
Well, I'm just thinking.
Remember, but you're older than us, so you have more to talk
That's
about.
like Mother Street people.
Oh. Well, I probably shouldn't say.
Why not?
because we're on TV, right?
NBC 19, well, I don't get it anymore, this drop it. Whatever you want.
Okay, we gotta talk about Bob Doyle. Everybody remember Bob, right?
Oh, God.
When Bob first moved to town, he rented where Peter Bruno lives, right? So, I think I was working for Roger Golf for the town at the time. So, there's this long-haired guy with goats and everything else running around his dooryard. The grass is this tall, he didn't mow nothing. And people say, who the hell is that? We say, that's our new surgeon. He's over in the hospital. He's a surgeon? And I mean, Bob, you know, when you first impressed him, you thought, boy, this guy's something else. When he moved down where he lived down on the end of the new road, I logged for him. So I had this guy from Level cutting, he was running the skidder for me, and I was talking, he goes, I just see this guy, it must have been 6.5 feet, 7 tall, had a 12-pack of bush running up to the woods. I said, let's knock the ball. I said, on his days off, he just drinks beer and throws the cans out for the woods because he can. It's his property, he wants to do what he wants to do. I mean, that was Bob, he just did what he wanted to do, but he was quite a guy in town, I think. We was lucky to have him. Very lucky.
Yeah, in fact, he operated on Don Monson. I was working, Bobby Whittaker and I were driving an oil truck, and we pulled into Bob's that afternoon to deliver oil, and there was like 3 dead goats in the driveway. And Bobby noticed that, of course, and we got back that night, and Don just got out of the hospital, so we stopped to see him, and Bobby said, did Bob Doyle operate on you? He said, yeah. Wow. He said, you know, he has 3 dead goats in the driveway. I don't think I let him operate on me. Don's color was gone.
We had a used car lot down, right down here, right across almost from the Lower Village store, which was operated by Don's brother, Red Monson. Actually, I don't even know his real name.
Alfred.
Alfred. Okay. You thought Don was tidy, Red is probably twice as bad, right?
Now, we came in the store, and he built some beer, he hold it up to the lights, and if there's anything floating in it, he'd bring it back. Always. He said, I think this may be a good batch this time. But anyway, told them how we did it, right, Frank Irish? Melanie used to pick up cars for him, you know how bad he was, how bad off he was. Gloria, did you go and drive cars home for him in the auctions?
I don't remember that, probably.
She doesn't remember anything.
I don't.
Do you know your name?
I do know my name. So far.
I have a Ken Gluck story.
Ken Long?
Ken Gluck.
Okay. Ken Glock, we'd love to hear it.
I first met him as my new doctor. Never seen him before. And he was imposing, as they mentioned, and I was befuddled, so I said, oh, Dr. Gluck, rhymes with... Well, he laughed for 10 minutes. He was a wonderful person.
Did you wait on, did he take care of you after that?
Oh, yes, for years. Oh, but I never got over the chagrin that I felt. Because it was very embarrassing. You might say.
Now, we used to have a softball team from Denmark that played. We used to have Bob Morris play. We had the guys from JB Concrete play. We had old John Osgood. Old John Osgood, how old is John?
He was 52 or 3.
He was the fastest guy on the damn team. The oldest guy on the team, but he's fastest team. We had Tommy Richardson, we had Butchie and Jimmy. We had Urban Hale,
Alan Burrows.
I don't remember Alan.
Alan, he played with him, yeah. Alan Burrows and Irving graduated together.
Did he?
Yeah, classmates at Frederick Catholic. Oh, actually, classmates all through school in Denver.
Butch was ahead of him?
Bush is a couple years ahead.
I was a valedictorian. Not ass. Did you delete that?
I'll just take it right out.
Woody, how do you do that? Blip, blip, blip?
I do this, and I pretend it happens.
I'm not gonna give any shots on that shit.
Now, I don't know if I should tell them about Grandpa with Russ Burrows and the new toilet in the house or not.
No, you won't.
You want to tell them?
No, you tell them.
Okay, I'll tell them.
We don't remember that.
Well, no, I know, I don't either, but I'll tell them. So, when we was growing up, we didn't have a flush toilet in the house, so Russ Burrows put the first flush toilet in the house. So my grandfather evidently kept using the other house. So, my grandmother said, Russ, did you ask Win why he doesn't use the toilet? So Russ said, Win, why don't you use the toilet? The damn water's pretty cold, he said. So, I don't know if the genes run very far in the family. But I didn't get that far.
Not that deep.
Neither do I. I guess none of us got called.
Anybody out there, any more anything, questions, anything we can comment to? We're running out of material, I think.
At some point, there will be a part 2 to this, correct?
Intermission?
No. 22, part 2 and 22.
Oh, of course they will.
We can
Okay.
do that. Did everybody have fun tonight? Did you just enjoy it or not?
Well, I want to ask you, how many people came because they wanted to see what the show was going to be about? Raise your hand.
How many,
Now,
so to see how many idiots we here?
How many did Butchie pay to come?
How many people came because they didn't know what the hell they were doing?
I'd like to thank you all, guys. This has been a great time, and I hope you enjoyed it. And maybe in 2022, we'll have another round.
Thank you.